This is Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi.
If the Delphi murder case has proven anything, it's that investigations are only as strong as the people running them. But what happens when key evidence is ignored? When investigators zero in on one suspect and seem to dismiss everything else? And when the prosecution is accused of hiding evidence that could pretty much change everything? Right now, we're looking at serious allegations that prosecutors buried a jailhouse confession from Ron Logan, the man whose property the victims were found on. We also know that alternative suspects were never fully investigated, and law enforcement may have misplaced or suppressed critical evidence that could exonerate Richard Allen. Today, we have retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffindaffer here, host of the Break the Case podcast, available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. Here to help us untangle the mess, Jen, as someone who's worked inside high-profile investigations, does this case look like justice at work, or does it look like law enforcement rushed to close the case without doing their due diligence, or something far darker?
Oh, Tony, this is going to be one of those cases I think that will really bother so many of us for just the reasons you've named.
Yeah.
Let's start with the fact that Ron Logan, again, probable cause affidavit submitted by the FBI to a judge, signed off on to, that stated that Ron Logan probable cause that he committed these murders all those years ago, back in only March after this all happened.
Yeah.
And it was pretty compelling probable cause at that time. Again, there was a rift between the state and local authorities and the FBI. The FBI no longer was allowed to be a part of the investigation. Again, they did not have venue other than by invitation. And now we see these confessions that were made to a jailhouse individual named Ricky Davis. Gosh, that we didn't know about. And the particular thing that's bothersome, Tony, is the mention of the box cutter, which then we heard on the stand a box cutter was likely used with these girls.
The first thing that the prosecution and Delphi will say is he failed his test, his polygraph miserably failed it. They like to add that little adjective into there. When did this polygraph take place? Who administered it? How did he fail it? What questions? We don't know any of those details. And also consider the source that's saying that. The same source that seems to be not admitting things or deleting things or covering things up left and right about this case. So if it doesn't really play to their advantage, they seem to not really say much about it. It's kind of shocking when you go all the way back to 2017 and realize that you had this man who's coming out with these accusations, but they're just poo-pooing it because of this polygraph they claim he failed. Why would you not look into this further, even if he fails the damn polygraph, considering the person he's talking about and the information that he's giving that no one else has other than investigators?
Well, a polygraph is a great investigative tool that we use. So often, it's not even the actual polygraph, but how they accept it, they refuse to take it, how they act during one. And the problem with a polygraph, depending on who administers it, it has to be done delicately. And I mean by that, that there are very specific questions that have to be asked that are only 1 to 3 questions. And they have to be very finite to get the truth out of an individual. Who administered it? I love that question. The FBI has the leading polygraph program. Those polygraphers go to school for months to be polygraph examiners. And who are we dealing with here? I've seen it all in the continuum of amazing polygraph examiners and not so amazing polygraph examiners. There's a reason why we don't see polygraphs used in court.
Mm-hmm. And those are questions I think that are very valid to ask. You also had Ricky Davis. he said he was willing to do the polygraph. He volunteered for it. According to them, he failed it. And I put that in big air quotes for those of you listening on the podcast. He was also willing to wear a wire back in 2017 when Ron Logan was still alive. So he's saying, look, if you don't want to believe me here, I will wear the wire. And they're like, no, no, sir, we don't need you to do that. Okay, number one, is that something that happens sometimes in prison where someone is an informant? They're like, let's do a wire if you're telling the truth rather than just an eyewitness testimony. And why would they turn this down when at the time, there is no Richard Allen. There is no prime suspect other than Ron Logan that had been looked at very closely by the FBI. Why say no to this?
There's no reason to say no. There's nothing better than having a witness come forward and be willing to be wired up and to contain and to get what we call a consensual monitoring tape. That's exactly what you want to have happen. So many times they say, "Oh my gosh, I can't do that. What if somebody, sees a wire, they think I'm a snitch, or, they get all concerned." But when somebody wants to, oh my gosh, it's a dream come true. And again, just poor law enforcement actions uh, continue in this case, or continued in that case, the case of Delphi. There's so much there, Tony, that's concerning on how the whole case was handled.
It seems the main thing that Delphi is going after is they're trying to attack the credibility of Ricky Davis. Obviously, he's an inmate. He's in there for dealing meth. He's got 50 years that he has to serve, and he's saying, "Look, I'm doing this for the good of these girls." He says, "I'm a father too," and I'm just paraphrasing. This is wrong. This needs to be looked at. I don't want any special treatment. I don't want my sentence reduced. I'm not going after any of that. If anything, he's putting himself at risk by putting himself out there the way he has now as being a snitch, which is obviously not looked at very fondly in prison. Do you see anything in this where this guy would have any reason to lie other than if he's a compulsive liar or something of that nature? I just don't see it.
Well, the only thing could be some people, and this is why, famous convicted people get killed, like
Hmm.
Jeffrey Dahmer, right? The person who kills them wants to make a name for themselves.
Hmm.
That has to be considered as a possibility. But the fact that he doesn't want any consideration, I think, is huge. The other thing is considering his crime. So, is he in there for fraud? Is he in there for a crime of what they call moral turpitude, where they've lied and he hasn't? He's committed apparently a conviction for drug offense. And a lot of times when people get cleaned up and they're no longer using, so they're no longer selling, so they can use, et cetera, et cetera. They do have a level of consciousness that comes back because they're back to normal.
Hmm.
They're not under the influence anymore, and they're not driven by those demons. And so I think a lot of what he says really holds true. And of course, I'm talking about that box cutter comment again,
Yeah.
plus all the other facts we know about Ron Logan. I never understood, and I know somebody that was involved in the investigation from the word go, and I never understood why the local and state department wanted to turn away from Ron Logan. The only reason ever given was that he was too old. And I think that is absolutely baloney. We know so many 70-year-old perverts and pedophiles and sexual deviants. Just because you're 70 doesn't mean your mind's right.
No, he was still out there working with livestock. So look, if you can handle livestock, you can handle two small girls. That's a ridiculous argument that they made at the beginning. But there's so many ridiculous arguments here. When it comes down to it, we have these letters that he claims that he'd sent to prosecutor Nick McClelland that were never answered, never looked into, and now I guess it's proving, did they ever make it to him? Number one, how easy is that going to be to try and find a paper trail on this? And there's also the video interview that he allegedly had done to him as well.
Well, we know that, most of the video interviews were lost in this case.
Yeah.
We've talked about that. I've always said, how in the world It's such a mishandling of evidence to tape over top of these most important interviews related to the killing of two girls. How can you
Yeah.
ever get to the truth? Um, and so here we have it again. You know, where's the uh, chain of custody on that? Was it properly handled? This video recording? Why didn't it get to the defense? It's all really concerning, but I can tell you, I think since Judge Gold is going to be the one to view this, I just think that she thinks Richard Allen is guilty. I think she thought that very early on, and it doesn't seem like she's doing anything but steer in that direction. So I don't see her taking action. I think it would happen at a higher court if it happens.
It's going to be, I mean, it's on the record now, and that's probably what this is. It's more of a procedural thing. So this is on the record. If we're expecting immediate action, gee, Judge Gull has been really good on that in terms of looking at any sort of real evidence. No. So yeah, I don't think we're going to find a whole lot there. But logistically, what can they find if they do look into this? Letters that go out of prison systems they get scanned typically. So at the very least, you would think that would be in the system unless it's been deleted. I don't know how far they keep back records or if somebody has an interest in saying, let's never get these into the system. Let's just throw these letters away to begin with. And if it got into discovery at all in the hands of McClelland, where can they go here to try and put some of these pieces together to at least initially prove they exist, because that's going to be problem number one. And I'm sure the first thing that Delphi wants to have happen is saying, well, they don't exist. This never happened.
Yeah, the number one thing they're going to have to do is look at the records that would exist in their main files. You know, does the FBI have any evidence of this? Remember, this was early on,
Yeah.
and the FBI was involved early on. Are there any witnesses still around? I know there are, for a matter of a fact. That might know more about this. And if he failed his polygraph, I do respect, I actually really do respect the polygraphs, but I understand that they have their downfalls. Give him another polygraph with a certified FBI examiner that's very seasoned. And if he fails again, with very direct and specific questions, then I think that that is worthwhile. But
Hmm.
it's normal to polygraph more than once. I can tell you, FBI agents to be FBI agents get polygraphed every 3 years, and I can't tell you how many agents didn't pass on their first one or second one because they were nervous
Yeah.
about something. It could have
Yeah.
been anything from, did you lie, about something, and then they get caught. And I just remember one of my partners came back, he was sweating bullets. He's like, I don't even know what I'm not doing right.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
don't know what I'm not saying. I'm like, just get in there, don't think, just answer truthfully.
Hmm.
And he passed, but I'm just saying that it is not unheard of for a polygraph exam that would need to be done more than once.
Sure. And I guess he's around. He's alive still, at least for now. That you could go back. I mean, even if these letters are gone, he could still reiterate what he said in the letters. Granted, Ron Logan's dead now. Keegan Kline's still alive, and he brings him up as part of these allegations in this. And Keegan Kline has always been a character who we've looked at going, how is this person not involved in this, considering he's a known pedophile and child predator who's behind bars for just that, but arrested years after this incident. Back in 2017, they were tracking him. They found him under the username Anthony Shots, trying to have a conversation, or actually having a conversation with one of the girls and planning to meet up the day they were murdered. But he has nothing to do with this. That's just pure luck, pure bad luck for the child predator Keegan Kline.
Yeah, again, you know, there's certainly no proof that I've ever seen that Keegan Kline was out there. But the point is, who was in his chat rooms? Who would have known about this possible meetup? And it's just, I've always said Richard Allen is the most unlucky guy because or I'm sorry, luckiest guy as a predator that he just happened to be at the exact right place and right time for these two girls to be there and for him to be able to take advantage of them. I mean, It just,
With no history of any of it.
no
Yeah.
history.
What was your take on one of the accusations that Ricky Davis is making? He's claiming that Ron Logan had said to him that McClelland, and I'm paraphrasing here somewhat, is a family friend or something of that nature, and he's not going to let him basically stay in there behind bars. That was an interesting one to me, and in no way am I saying that there's some sort of connection there. I'm just saying what the claim is from Ricky Davis.
Yeah, that's been something that's been rumored long ago at when the FBI got out of it and all of that happened. Who was protecting Ron Logan? I did a lot of investigation that I could do with open source, trying to find some connection. I never could
Yeah.
find a connection. I still don't understand why, but that doesn't mean one didn't exist. I don't think it's ever probably been thoroughly vetted and investigated because investigators are too busy investigating crimes, not connections necessarily.
And it makes you wonder with that. I mean, if there is a connection of some sort, is it as direct as a lot of us think it is? Family friend. I mean, that really could mean anything there. What seems to me on this case, when you really dissect it and you look at some of these characters, Keegan Kline to Ron Logan, it feels to me that they didn't go after them on the Delphi case for fear of where that's going to lead them to, or who that may lead them to. Again, just pure speculation here. But if these two, as the allegation is from Ricky Davis, that they were basically part of a kind of a child porn ring and they shared their pictures or whatever they're sharing on a like a monthly basis, they'd get together and he had to help Ron Logan because he didn't know how to use technology and all that. That's interesting to me because it makes me wonder who else is part of this sharing of these sort of things, and where would that lead to if that were looked into a little bit deeper. I think that to me is a big question in this case. Again, pure speculation, and I have no idea who it would lead to, but that's the only thing that can come to mind as to why there's always the brakes being put on some of these otherwise very despicable human beings.
Yeah, it really kind of lends me to think about the Sandra Birchmore case,
Yeah.
right? A case where uh, a girl murdered, only it was made to look like she hung herself. And the reason I bring that up is, you know, normal law enforcement would not think, oh my gosh, this officer is going to cover all of this up because it's so outside of the lens of any decent officers. But look what happened.
Yeah.
So, and you wonder with something like this, does it go deeper? Is there an entanglement? I can tell you that the only way I think that would ever be discovered is if the FBI opened up a public corruption investigation regarding this case, much like we've seen both on Sandra Birchmore. We saw it on Karen Reed. Karen Reed, they didn't come up with anything. Sandra Birchmore, they did. That's the only way it would ever be uncovered, in my opinion.
What will it take for the FBI to open a public corruption case on Delphi? Because they got kind of a track record going on here. It's not just this case. I'm starting to do some research and a deeper dive into some of the other cases that they've blundered over the last many a years, and there's quite a few and some really questionable things and people lying under oath. I mean, the police chief just got or just quit because of that on a different issue. Why not? What would that take to get the attention of the FBI to say we should take a look here?
Well, you know what it would take? It would take somebody going to the FBI, submitting a complaint with some verifiable information that would support this allegation. For instance, if Ricky Davis came forward and, wrote the FBI, said what they did, and then if he could prove these letters somehow, which I don't know if he can,
Yeah.
or submit to a polygraph and pass with flying colors, or somebody else go forward to the FBI and list particular dates and things that went on during that investigation and other things, right? that is what it would take. But you can't just open a public corruption investigation without what we call predication.
Hmm.
So you would really need to have not only allegations, but allegations with at least some breadcrumbs as to facts that would support those.
Don't we have that though? I mean, doesn't that not exist already? I mean, we already have the one officer who basically got demoted when he started questioning how the investigation was going, and then he's gone. You have all the Ron Logan stuff. You have all the Keegan Klein stuff. You have all these other things that just seem to have been done inappropriately. You have the DVD information from all of the interviews that were done being lost or taped over. There just seems like a lot here that is pretty verifiable. That, I mean, I don't know, isn't it already there? Isn't there enough to the bar to get them to do something on this?
Well, if I were a supervisor and the complaint came into my desk and I ran the PC desk, I would definitely open it up for an inquiry, a preliminary inquiry
Hmm.
with a PI. I would open that up and assign it to an agent and have them do some, looking to see if there's fire where the smoke is.
Hmm.
But every PC supervisor, the supervisor on that desk, they have their own lens.
Hmm.
Is it something they're going to file away? It never disappears, but are they just going to file it with no action, or are they going to sign it for a PI? So, that's what it would take, Tony, specifically, is literally a line supervisor agreeing to open it.
Do you think we're going to see something like that here? Or what do you see for the next steps in this case, other than Judge Gall saying about this? Yeah, move along.
Yeah, well, I do anticipate that, yeah, move along. And the only other thing I could think of is, because of all the appellate issues that exist here,
Hmm.
is could it rise up to, a different court, just like what happened with the Supreme Court of Indiana looking at her choice to remove his counsel.
Hmm.
And I think if another set of eyes looks at this from the state level, you know, I think things could be revisited, at least from what, we've seen. But unfortunately, because the trial was completely closed, there's so little we still know,
Yeah.
just even in terms of all the evidence that convicted Richard Allen.
Yeah, it's a mystery, it's a train wreck, and it just seems to be playing out with rules that they've defined that again defy logic. There's elements of this that remind me of Ellen Greenberg too, where it's just like, yeah, that's impossible what you're saying. Well, it's true. It's true. It's physically impossible. She didn't come back and become a zombie. The same with this case. Like, how are we just ignoring so many key pieces here, and we just go in this direction? It baffles the mind, and it makes you wonder just how long this will take. Unfortunately, it probably will take quite a while, and there'll be many years that Richard Allen does not get of his life, if he's innocent. Especially with his kid, and with his wife. It's nuts, but all we can do is keep talking until maybe something's done.
Yep, the jury has spoken, and I always give them the utmost respect. But can a jury find truth if they don't have it all?
Exactly.
Craving non-stop true crime updates? Press subscribe now and get the latest cases, analysis, and expert commentary delivered straight to your feed. Only from the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today.